You are listening to a Wycombe Sounds election special featuring the candidates standing in Beaconsfield. We have already heard last night from Alexa Collins, the Labour candidate, the Independent Dominic Grieve and the Greens Zoe Hatch, and we've already heard this evening from the Conservative candidate Joy Morrissey. It is time now to complete the set, as I was joined by the Independent candidate Adam Cleary.
I was born in Kuwait, and my parents were sort of travellers in the 70s, and Kuwait was something, I think, of a British, not sure protectorate is the right word, but yes, they were there teaching English, and I was born in Kuwait, and then moved around the globe with my parents again, sort of moving around to various countries, Thailand and Ethiopia, and obviously this is when I was a child, so I don't remember it. So, and then I was in Mexico for a number of years, and that means I very fortunately and happily speak fluent Spanish, and the link with Mexico has been good as well, because my wife is from Mexico originally, and she's wonderful, and an enormous part of my life. So that has been very powerful and enriching for me. And then I was in England finally, and I went to school in Cheshire, in Cheadlehume School in near Stockport in Cheshire, which is sort of where my parents finally sort of ended back up after many travels randomly around the world. And then after that, I was at I did some employment at IBM, and then I was at London School of Economics at university.
Okay, and so what about employment-wise, and then how have you ended up in Beaconsfield, or standing for the Beaconsfield constituency?
Course, yeah. So, I mean, employment-wise, after leaving LSE, I worked in the city as a broker, as a trader, as a research analyst for various banks, large banks, and I did that until 2005. And then I sort of set up on my own. I set up my own firm, which is an investment management firm regulated by the FCA. I've had that since 2005. So I've basically been self-employed since 2005. My firm is called Cavanham Capital. It's very much a small operation, just me and a couple of people. But you know, it has been my business and my baby for years. And how did I end up in politics? Well, how did I end up in Beaconsfield? Sorry, first. Well, I think, you know, when we were about to have our third child, we really wanted to have a garden and space and move out. And some friends lived in Beaconsfield, and we went there, and we thought it was a wonderful place as it is. And we decided to buy a house there, so we were renting in London, but we bought a house in Beaconsfield, and we've been there since 2005, and it's been tremendous, and the children have grown up, and yeah, it's great.
Fantastic. So tell me first of all, about then they're getting into politics.
Sure.
How long have you been interested in politics?
Well, I studied government, as it's rather presumptuously called, I suppose, at LSE, which is politics. And I've been interested in it from sort of the very beginning of my time. But I sort of came to it, or came of age at the time when Maastricht was coming in. And I think that sort of the EU has been this great divide in the Conservative side, or whatever, the Conservative side of politics, if you like, and I really couldn't reconcile myself to the Conservative Party's sort of choice, effectively, to throw in its lot completely with Europe after Maastricht, and so I sort of became disenchanted. I focused on my job, but I did support and sort of work for the Referendum Party in 1997. And I was the agent for Sir Alan Walters in London and Westminster. And then
just for those who were younger as well.
I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. The Referendum Party then was the forerunner really to UKIP. So stood very much on a platform of we are going to hold a referendum as to whether we're in or out.
Absolutely.
And they clearly they didn't win the election, but actually they certainly shook up the political establishment.
Indeed. I mean, this has been the longest running argument in British political history, and I have always been in favour of leaving the EU, frankly, and I've always been on that side of the argument. And then obviously there's a sort of hiatus of the Blair years, which were a sort of great desert, if you like, for political action. And then, only really with the rise of UKIP, and then there's the referendum, which was sort of forced upon the Conservative government. And then when that was announced, I sort of campaigned for Vote Leave, not in any particular position, but I canvassed and I went round and I campaigned and I did leaflets and all these things. But I was frankly amazed that we won the Vote Leave campaign, and that really provided the rebirth, because I saw again light in the tunnel. I thought, wow, amazingly, we are actually going to be able to exit the EU and recover our freedom and our sovereignty as an independent country. So really, yes, after years in the desert, the result of the Leave campaign gave me this sort of renewed hope, and then since then I've sort of been more involved and more enthusiastic, because I see that there is a possibility of achieving our long-held goal. But at the same time, I expected the government to do what it said it would do so many times, and to honour the result and all these things they said they would do. And so I was dismayed, and I'm being very understated when I say dismayed as a word, in March this year when they didn't. And I was appalled, really. And I thought that this is really, it's not on, it's a disgrace. I just can't accept this. So I did then sign up and support the Brexit Party, and they actually suggested I take on a seat in East Sussex, which I did. But obviously it's quite a long way from Beaconsfield.
Yeah.
So
yes.
it was what they asked to do, and I wanted to do something for Brexit, right? And then they decided not to stand in a certain number of seats, and so I decided to launch myself independently here in Beaconsfield, basically, because I'm not convinced that the Conservatives have the wish or the will to deliver Brexit, and I want people to have an opportunity, and we cannot keep voting for the same party when it keeps failing to deliver and expect a different result.
Well, were you surprised that they didn't stand in Beaconsfield? I know that they said that they weren't going to stand against the sitting Conservative candidates, but clearly Beaconsfield is a little bit of a special case.
Indeed. I mean, I was surprised. I think you should either stand everywhere or nowhere, or you should have some other criteria, but to align yourself with what is the ruling governing party and say you're going to be the second team for that, I just don't understand the logic of that decision. I think, it's beyond parties, it's leave or remain. So, where you have a very strong Remain, sort of where you have a Remainer standing, then I think there's an argument for standing there and not standing against Leavers, for example. But regardless of party, but to sort of say we're going to align ourselves with a particular political party, basically it just makes it very difficult to argue the case, because then it just undermines the entire argument, I think. So yeah, that was.
So at what point did you bravely think, right, okay, I'm going to go on my own, I'm going to stand as an independent?
Well, the day before nominations closed.
Okay, so it was as tight as that.
Yeah. And I got the nomination in 2 hours before it closed.
Okay.
Basically. Yeah.
Very impressive.
Yeah.
So I think it's very clear what you feel about Brexit, so I'm not going to ask you too much more about that, but looking more locally at some of the other issues that particularly people are saying to us with regards to Beaconsfield. First of all, the rural issues. It obviously is a rural constituency in a way. What do you think some of the important issues are there?
Well, I mean, the issue that comes up a lot is planning, obviously, and the issue, in Beaconsfield is sort of enormous force of the desire of development and every green space being developed, and this sort of tension between the old town, if you like, and everyone who wants to build and make it bigger and make more homes, and this sort of tendency to have development everywhere is I think the biggest issue. And I don't think as such people are against development in a way, but they are against losing green spaces, and they are against losing the environment and the wildlife and the things that make Beaconsfield special. I'm talking about Beaconsfield because I live there and I know it best, but I know the issues are similar in other places. And so I think, we have to take more account of the local community and the local community's wishes when making planning decisions, and we also have to take more account of the need to create infrastructure that mirrors the development that is being authorised. So it's a sort of universal comment on the doorstep, and I've canvassed 3,500-4,000 people. Not every one of them answered the door, by the way, but 1 in 10 sort of is the ratio. But
I'm impressed that you counted as well.
But their feeling is it's almost universal. They put up these homes, but they don't do the surgeries and the sort of roads properly, and they don't think about the effect on the rest of us, sort of thing. So I think there is a democracy deficit in planning, and I think I won't pretend that I have all the answers. I'm not a planning expert, but I do perceive that there is a great desire to build the houses, very little desire to think of the rest of the community, and it's almost like Brexit, where there is a government sort of hell-bent on doing what it wants to do because one can see the profitability that arises from a planning decision where you have land that is worth 7,000 an acre being worth 1.5 million an acre, and that sort of colossal difference in land value that arises from a planning decision obviously makes the incentive structure very strong to approve planning, but it doesn't seem to make it strong enough to also approve everything else that is needed to absorb the planning decision that has been made. So I think we need to look at that and consider the needs of the existing community before we proceed to approve more planning and take away more greenbelt.
What are your thoughts on the HS2 project that is currently going on, stroke maybe not going on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm opposed to HS2. I don't think it's sensible from a cost-benefit perspective, and it's sort of worrying and a little bit crazy the way the estimates of the cost just keep spiraling completely out of control. And I just think it's an example of an infrastructure project that should be scrapped in favour of a larger number of schemes, road schemes, rail schemes across the country that deliver much stronger cost-benefit analysis returns than this enormously expensive sort of scheme. I'm wary of being blasé. I'm wary of saying things out of my expertise, but technology in transport is moving and has moved on enormously since HS2 is planned, and so one wonders almost if it wouldn't be worth stepping back and taking a more comprehensive approach to reviewing transport, and no doubt I'll be told that this is done already, but a project that was planned so many years ago when we have like the Hyperloop which has emerged and other technologies which I think might be beneficial to take a step back and look again at the overall context and think what are our aims as a nation, that even taking into account, for example, our climate change ambitions and these sorts of things. So for that and the cost benefit, I'm against HS2.
What about the expansion of Heathrow Airport?
By contrast, I think the expansion of Heathrow Airport is more easily defended. And I know that there will be people who will not welcome me saying that. But I think that, the expansion of Heathrow Airport, we're looking at a cost of about 18 billion and potential net economic benefits of like 150 billion. I mean, the returns on investment, if you like, are very strong. And you're talking about, I think the median estimate is 70,000 jobs in the local regional area. Obviously it doesn't tie itself down to a constituency, but so that's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of economic benefit. That's an airport that handles 75% of UK freight. It's the main international airport, and I don't think it's realistic to sort of start again somewhere else. And an airport that is operating at 98% of capacity. So I think there is a very strong economic argument for the expansion of Heathrow. One does have to take into account the noise considerations. One does have to take into account the environmental impact. I think that, I would sort of talk about technology there, because we're starting to see short-haul flights, electric flights. We are seeing a lot of improvement in noise mitigation technology around aircraft. We are seeing a lot of effort around decarbonisation. So I think that a mixture of technology and regulatory pressure, and also a third runway allows a sort of a better management if of flight paths. If I've understood correctly from the documents I've read about Heathrow expansion, which is also beneficial, because it means that you don't just have the usual flight paths that everyone worries about, but you can adjust. It gives you a multiplicity of new flight paths. So I think there is a strong argument for supporting the expansion of Heathrow.
What did you think about the recent protest by Extinction Rebellion?
I'm not in favour of Extinction Rebellion's approach. Climate change is a very important issue, and absolutely accept that we have to take a reasoned approach towards it, and to try and resolve it and to try and decarbonise. But I don't think that jumping on electric trains and disrupting commuters and vandalising the Department of Transport and causing enormous loss of police time, which obviously is very important in London, I don't think this is a positive way of dealing with this issue. And I also have to say that I worry a bit about a platform that says, we have to have net zero like next year or something, because if we're sort of brutally frank, net zero like in 2 years means no cars, it means no central heating, it means food rationing. And they're talking about citizens' assemblies, which sound a little bit to me like the suppression of democracy. So when I see people proposing extreme measures that sort of imply a cut in the living standards of the less well-off people in society because of the sake of some sort of emergency, I worry that all is not well, and that there is something wrong with such an overhyped narrative. I think absolutely let's do everything we can. Let's push in the regulatory sense. Let's push the technology as far as it can be to decarbonise. But please let's not be hysterical, and let's not vandalise buildings, and let's not occupy central London. It really doesn't help even the agenda.
What is your opinion of the NHS as an organisation?
I mean, I think the NHS is a treasure of this country. I think almost without, I don't think. I've done all this canvassing, and I haven't met a single person who doesn't value it enormously as one of our central institutions in the UK, and I share that view, and I think that it's something that has to be properly funded. It's a very important collective insurance mechanism for the whole population to feel secure and know that they can recur to medical care that's free at the point of delivery. So I 100% support the NHS. I think one of the problems that the NHS has at the moment is that I think it's very good at medical outcomes, but a lot of people are now looking to it for non-medical outcomes, if I put it that way. Mental health issues, very strong, that I've noticed in canvassing, which has affected me a lot, actually, because you speak to people and a lot of them bring up mental health issues that they're having, and clearly the NHS is not designed to deal with that sort of long-term counselling relationship. And so I think that we have to think again about how, whether it's social enterprise or community-led approach, we can support people with those issues outside of the sort of medical framework of the NHS.
What do you think about the grammar school policy in Buckinghamshire?
Well, I mean, I know that many parents greatly value grammar schools and greatly value the academic success that grammar schools have, and I think that the system is valuable in the sense that it provides excellent education and social mobility and access, and so I support that and value that. Having said all that, it unfortunately seems to cause that the other part of the system is not as well taken care of as it should, and I think that is a great shame. And we have some problems in the constituency, for example, in Burnham, where Burnham is a sort of island and has no secondary school provision, non-selective secondary provision, and clearly people in Burnham feel aggrieved about that, and I completely understand them feeling aggrieved about that, and I think that we should do more to try and have a more balanced system. And I won't pretend to be an expert in educational policy, as I haven't hopefully pretended to be an expert on other areas of policy that I'm not expert on. But I think that clearly there's a case for much more funding, and there's a case for re-examining the system of the non-selective side, to see what can be done to help people who don't flourish in the selective sort of mindset, how they can achieve self-actualization, how they can achieve the best outcome, and so more needs to be done on that side of things, and that I think does mean more funding, and it also means, I think, a recognition that 85% of school budgets go on school staffing, which is fine, of course, everyone has to be paid, no problem at all, but there isn't enough left over for buildings and for special educational needs. And many parents have mentioned, when I've met them on the doorstep, SEN, special educational needs, are really absent again. So I think, we have to broaden out the provision and consider the non-selective and really give that more focus.
Would you support a rise in taxation to help things such as the education system?
Potentially, yes. But as an independent candidate, I hope you'll forgive me for not having developed a full tax and spending budget. And as an independent candidate, obviously, I'm not going to be proposing a budget or anything. So it's not something that lies within my power.
Of course,
But yes, I mean, if necessary, then we do need to support public services, and people, rely on those, and that is in the constituency, and that is right, and they should be properly funded.
What do you consider the role of an MP should be?
Well, I think an MP should, represent the interests of constituents and the views of constituents first and foremost. And I think, when they present themselves for election, they should honour what they said that they would stand for and what they would do. And, I think one of the issues I have with Mr. Grieve, very strongly, I'm afraid, is that Mr. Grieve promised to honour the referendum. He said, the referendum, I will uphold the decision of the people taken in the referendum. And he said this in 2017. He was re-elected on that basis. And then he spent the next 2.5 years trying to stop Brexit. And he did everything he could. And frankly, some quite extreme things were done on his part to stop Brexit, to frustrate Brexit, to do everything he could that was exact opposite of what he said he stood for. So I really don't think this is tenable or right. So I think that if you say I'm elected and I'm elected on this basis and I stand for this and this and this, then you can't sort of then turn around and say, oh, actually, people elect me because I'm so brilliant and I'm an amazing lawyer and you should leave it to my judgment because I'm the one who knows here and you know, I'll let you know what I've decided. I don't think that's right anymore. I think essentially you have to continually be a barometer for people's interests and represent them and stand for them and campaign for them. Having said that, a lot of the things that people are concerned about do lie within the direct power of the local authority and are not in the power of members of parliament. So in a sense, you get the complaints, but you don't have the power to remedy them. But that is no excuse. And so, you know, if elected, you know, I will have every channel open and I will listen to every comment and I will respond to every polite suggestion and I will try to take up every single case or campaign that constituents want and require me to do.
Final question, if you were elected, where would you live? Would you seek a second home in Westminster or would you continue to live where you currently do?
I would live in Beaconsfield, definitely, yeah.
That was the independent candidate Adam Cleary, and you can hear that again along with all of my interviews with the candidates who are standing in both Beaconsfield and Wycombe, as well as the two roundtable discussion programmes that featured the candidates who are standing in Beaconsfield and Wycombe on our website, which is wycombesound.org.uk. The full list of Beaconsfield candidates once again is as followed. Adam Cleary, who is standing as an independent, Alexa Collins, who is standing for Labour, Dominic Grieve, who is standing as an independent candidate, Zoe Hatch, who is standing for the Green Party, and Joy Morrissey, who is standing for the Conservatives. Those are the candidates in the Beaconsfield constituency for the general election, which of course takes place on Thursday, December the 12th. And Wycombe Sound will be having through the night coverage of the general election on Thursday, December the 12th, starting from 10 p.m. We will be covering the results in Wycombe, Beaconsfield, Chesham and Amersham, Aylesbury, Buckingham and Maidenhead, as well as across the country. I do hope that you can join us from 10 p.m. on general election night. As I say, we aim to go all the way through until 7 o'clock in the morning. Many thanks to all of the candidates for coming in and giving us interviews and also taking part in the roundtable discussion. Wycombe Sound is very, very grateful to them all for taking the time to come in to their local radio station. And as I say, if you do want to hear any of them again, then just head to our website, which is wycombesound.org.uk.